All right. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup to the CBTU for having me here today, and a special thanks to Executive Director Sean Strickland for being part of our advisory council and the work we're doing, as you have just seen. My plan today, if we'll just load up my PowerPoint, is to tell you about Energy for a Secure Future, who we are, what we are doing, why it matters to Canada, why it matters to Canadian workers. And I'd like to kick it off with a quick question. Let's see, we'll go to the next slide. Yes. So, what considerations should be a priority as Canada considers the future of energy? And I have a few options up there. Global energy security, environment and climate, jobs in Canada, energy affordability, reliability, reconciliation. So we'll just take a few minutes for you guys to, ladies and gentlemen, to fill out your answers. All right, so this is very good, and I think what's important here with these results is that you can see that many things matter, and there are many things that we have to get right when we think about the future and our energy systems and ensuring that they can deliver the things that people need, including jobs, including environmental performance, including many things, some that I didn't even list here. And this bigger value proposition and the need to talk about this bigger value proposition is a main driver for why Energy for a Secure Future was created. I'll go back to my slides. You know, in the months before we launched this project, the world was experiencing things and learning lessons that we did not think that we would be learning in 2023. There was a war going on in Europe, a war not just of weapons, but of energy. Many parts of Europe, including Europe's largest economy, Germany, which has a very significant build-out of renewables, was still very dependent on Russian gas, and found themselves in a position where months into the conflict, and including up to today for certain European countries, including Italy, I have a headline there from April, we're still paying billions of dollars to buy Russian gas. And weaning off and untangling themselves from this conflict for Europe was made more challenging by supply challenges in getting access to natural gas. You know, we're just coming out of the COVID pandemic, but we're also dealing with, I think, what can be described as wrong thinking when it comes to what the energy transition is going to be. And so there have been lots of challenges and underinvestment in gas development, and that meant there was less supply, and that meant prices went skyrocketing, if we all kind of think back to that time. And you'd have tanker ships of LNG headed to Asia, turned back mid-voyage to head to Europe because they got outpriced by spot markets and European buyers. And what that meant was that Asia also wasn't getting the energy it needed, and so they started burning more coal. And many of our Asian allies, including Japan and India, and there's another headline there about that, continue to rely on gas from Russia, even if they don't want to, because of the challenge of delivering on all those values that we saw in that first question when it comes to energy and energy security. And many of these countries, the German Chancellor, the Japanese Prime Minister, turned to Canada, are still turning to Canada. And the question is, what are we going to do? Now, Canada, like a lot of the Western world, when we've talked about energy in the last few years, we've mostly talked about climate. Nobody was talking about geopolitics, 18 months ago or 20 months ago. People weren't really talking seriously about fuel switching from coal to gas as a way to help address the environmental issue of climate change and global emissions. These things were just missing from the conversation. And without having these extra lenses and these extra values as part of how we looked at developing energy solutions for the world, for our own country, and for cooperation with other countries, it's meant that we've had a less resilient world, and we've seen the fragility of that in the examples I just gave. And it means that people have been negatively affected. Energy prices are still very high in many parts of Europe. Food is expensive because natural gas isn't just about energy, it's also an input to industry and to agriculture. And there have been impacts to jobs. And ironically, there have been higher GHG emissions. In 2022, the world burned more coal for electricity than ever in the history of the planet, 8 billion metric tons. And I think we need to keep in mind that as a kind of a global issue, coal burning is 48% of the global emissions worldwide. Now, again, my question was, what is Canada going to do? And energy security was created to start to answer these questions and to bring lots of people to the table in terms of developing those answers. So who are we? We are a civil society initiative, as you heard earlier. We are supported by the full gas value chain, upstream, midstream, downstream. We have brought together leaders from all kinds of industries, from mining. We have Dominic Barton, who's the chair of Rio Tinto, from labor, and Sean Strickland, from manufacturing. We have involvement from the chemistry sector, manufacturers, steelmakers, from farmers. We just had the president of the Canadian Federation of Agriculture join us, and many Indigenous leaders who see energy trade as deeply connected to reconciliation and to prosperity for their communities. And we continue to grow. We're always inviting more people into our network. And we're trying to answer two questions. The first is, how is Canada going to approach the transformation of our own domestic energy systems while ensuring the things that we all value and that you all highlighted earlier: affordability, jobs, reconciliation, reliability? And how are we going to draw on the lessons of 2022, which we also saw earlier, so that we are more resilient in our approach? The second question is, how will Canada approach our role in the world as an energy-rich nation? What are we going to do to help our friends around the world enhance their energy security, lower their emissions, ensure affordable and reliable energy for their people? And so this is the big challenge we put before ourselves. The way we're approaching this is through a three-pronged approach. The first is thought leadership. So we've been doing research, papers, articles, and other pieces that we put out. We've been working to participate in conversations like this, but also convene roundtables and other dialogues. And we've also worked to have international engagement as civil society in Canada speaking to the world, because this isn't just a problem that governments can solve. This is a problem we all need to work together to solve with our different skills and expertise. Our first paper came out on March 1st. It was called Ownership and Beyond: How Indigenous Peoples Are Shaping a More Secure Energy Future. The report highlighted the very sophisticated partnerships and participation that Indigenous people are engaged in the gas sector with industry, all parts of it, looking at how natural gas trade and natural gas access have enhanced energy security, have created opportunities for wealth, are advancing reconciliation. And as part of the research, we interviewed different leaders from the different communities to find out, how did Haisla become a majority owner in the Cedar LNG project? Why did 16 nations take on an equity stake in Coastal GasLink pipeline? Why is the Enoch involved in CCS and hydrogen, et cetera, et cetera? And I think the next quote really speaks to this and this whole conversation. Our communities are not separate from the world. What happens in Asia and Europe affects us. Projects like Cedar LNG can offer a global emissions reduction solution, and this will create positive benefits for the world and for our community. And that's from Chief Counselor Crystal Smith of the Haisla Nation, who is also a member of our advisory council. Our next paper is going to be coming out hopefully in a month or so, and it's focused on Canada's LNG opportunity. And we're really looking at how does Canadian LNG affect and benefit the environment? What does it mean for Canada in terms of jobs? Yesterday we heard about the expansion of LNG Canada. Cedar is another project, and there are other projects being considered in Newfoundland and other parts of the West Coast. What does it mean for innovation? And how does us pursuing this opportunity build our relationships with the world, and enhance global security. So we're going to be looking at all of this. What we know from the research we've looked at already, some of which come from the North American Building Trade's own research, is that jobs associated with conventional energy, where we continue to see work to innovate and reduce emissions, are high quality, high paying jobs. And we saw that as well in the research that we did around revenue and jobs for Indigenous people. We also know that there is a huge emission reduction benefit from Canada getting our LNG to international markets. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce put out a report at the beginning of March that highlighted that if 20% of China's coal-fired electricity were displaced by natural gas, LNG from Canada, it would represent 780 megatons of emissions eliminated annually. And that is more than all of the emissions that are produced in Canada. And I think that speaks to another important part of the numbers on all of this. If Canada and even the United States went to net zero tomorrow, the world would still not be on track to meet its emissions goals, as we see from that graph up there, because of the high use of coal. We need to play a role in finding an energy solution for our allies around the world that helps them bring down that graph of emissions, while ensuring that their people have the energy they need for industry, for jobs, for a higher quality of life. And so we hope this next paper can really start to dig into those opportunities and values and that story of a nation-building opportunity and job-creating opportunity for Canada that comes from us really building out these projects. And as a final piece, as I mentioned, Energy for a Secure Future wants to continue to engage with people. And so we've been bringing our research to the community in Canada and to the international community. And these pictures are from outreach that we had with the G7 and the G20. We met with the ambassador of Japan, who's the chair of the G20, the ambassador of India, chair of the G7, sorry, India is the chair of the G20, but also other members of the G7, like the ambassador of the United States, who I know was here yesterday. We spoke to Canada as well, obviously, France and others. And we're really trying to provide some of these insights, again, that we're building from this ground-up process. And these are great discussions. And what all of these international leaders said to us was, we would love more Canadian energy. We want to work with you. We buy Canadian gas right now through the United States, but we would love to buy it directly from you. Let's keep working together. And I think we're starting to get the pieces in terms of our work in reconciliation, in terms of the work in training, in terms of the work to broaden this values conversation where we can play that role. Because at the end of the day, and as you know, you'll read in my bio, I firmly believe that energy is about people, no matter what party you're from. And I was very happy yesterday to hear the leader of the NDP say how important oil and gas is, and oil and gas workers are, because energy makes all of our lives better, especially when it's affordable and reliable. And this is the guiding star of our work. And it's how we hope to work with the CBTU and others going forward to build the jobs of tomorrow, but also to build a more secure future. So thank you very much.